it's a rewiring process, and it might not occur. My dad might not agree that gay is okay in his lifetime, and that's what I have to live with. I have to live with that and accept that in order to be able to move on. It doesn't stop me from dressing up in feathers and glitter and showing him the photographs.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Growing Up Christian. I'm Sam.
And I'm Casey.
And he's slow on the return. And we are here with our friend of the show, new friend in real life. He was on episode, I think it was 12. I should have looked it up ahead of time. Luke Slam Dunk Wilson is hanging out with us for the intro. How's it going, Luke?
Oh, pretty well. How about y'all?
Oh, we're doing just peachy, and we have you to thank for that a little bit. So,
goodness,
you are like my direct source of LU news. Like whatever's happening to the Falwells at the moment, like I know I'll hear about it first on Luke's page. You're the Drudge Report of Luke News or of LU news.
No, I never intended for this even to be my life. Like, I was not ever trying to associate myself with liberty. In fact, I was trying to do the exact opposite, like separating myself. But now that's what I'm known for. And you know what? I'm doing I consider this the Lord's work. And so,
amen, brother. We're with you 100%. So basically, like, to get into, in case anyone missed it, and some of them might have, because, some people's lives aren't as wrapped up in this world as ours usually still is. A video went pretty viral of Jerry Jr. showing up to an LU seniors, I believe it was a comedy night is what he showed up at.
And Sam, how funny do you think that comedy night was full of LU seniors?
I'm sure
it was dope.
There was some good Christian fun going on there. But so this Jerry shows up. He looks and sounds. I mean, it's a quick clip. It's got to be like 5 or 6 seconds tops, maybe. And he seems drunk, and he invites them all out to the real party at his farmhouse or whatever, his ranch, whatever he calls it. I don't know. And it exploded. And that tweet came to us from our friend here. So I think how did you even get it? Were you the one at the college party, Luke? What were you doing?
Imagine I was still in Lynchburg. No, I woke up, I saw the video, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, look at this. Like, that's the thing, right? You think that, you'll go going about your week, you'll be going about your month or whatever, and you think, liberty, the news from liberty will die down. It never does, right? It's just this constant stream of just tomfoolery. So I wake up, I see this video, I was like, oh my goodness, like, I need to post this. So I tag some folks. In fact, they're a friend of the show as well. Christian Nightmares, and so I tagged Christian Nightmares as well as Chrissy Stroop. Chrissy Stroop is this wonderful Stanford educated historian who does a lot of public scholarship, and so I tagged both of them, and they both shared the video, and then the video just kept getting more and more views, and I've never had anything like that happen. And then all the articles started being published about it, and like the same day. And then I even published a little article on it as well. But it just turned into this, the video just kind of, like you said, went viral, and I'm here for it. I'm living for it. And I'm so glad.
Dude, I watched a video of Young Turks breaking it down today. And they referred to it as Jerry Jr.'s "we're going streaking" moment.
Wait, young who? Young
Turks?
Wow, should I know that?
Oh, I figured that'd be right up your alley.
Ah, man, I feel like I'm missing out on things now.
Pinko, commie, whatever you.
I'm having some FOMO.
No,
well, I think we have to, obviously. Hey, forewarning: we're gonna goof on Jerry here. But I think it's important that we recognize that, Jer Bear at this point, it's pretty clear he has an alcohol problem. And, Becky's not letting him keep any booze in the house. So realistically, he probably just shotgunned a bottle of Windex, walked there and took a hand sanitizer chaser, probably the kind that has the little exfoliator beads in it. So his tum-tum was rumbly. He was just not himself by the time he got to that microphone.
And he's extra he's extra angry because the only thing he can do is watch Becky drink alcohol. So it's not
Ooh.
It's so crazy. I mean, he really is spiraling out of control at this point. Like with everything that's been going on, like for him to not even recognize that showing up at a Liberty, I mean, who knows? Like every one of us went to Liberty parties that were either in or out of the Liberty way, but if they were off campus, they were oftentimes not. There was usually like drinking involved. They're seniors anyway. I don't know when graduation is, but I mean, they still would have been students. There probably would have been some risk involved, but just for him to show up at a Liberty event with his status at Liberty right now it's so like he's got to be some level of deluded at this point. I can't even. Why did he even know about it? Like, what is he doing there?
So from my understanding of what happened, there's a longer video out there. We don't have access to it. It's not yet been made public, but a few folks who wrote these articles about this video received word or either saw the whole video or received, like a transcript or something like that to know more about what was said and what Jerry did, and also like the context. Apparently what happened was that his daughter was at the party. So like imagine being Jerry Falwell's daughter in general, but in this context all the more. Imagine being Jerry Falwell's daughter and then all of a sudden your drunk dad gets up, snags the mic, is like, let me at him, and like start, spewing nonsense about like the real graduation party is going to be at my house and all this. And so I think it's that his daughter was the one who I guess told him, hey, I'm going to a party, which was her first mistake, telling him anything. But then he showed up afterwards. But my question is, who drove him there? Right? Like the guy was like very intoxicated. So like, how did he get there? Who gave him the mic? Like, there are so many questions. Like, were the jokes really that funny at this comedy show? I'm curious,
That's the biggest question here, is whether or not they were actually funny. I mean, it's just a group of seniors, a few of them. I can't imagine. I mean, I wasn't into comedy so much when I was at Liberty. I wasn't going to any local comedy shows, but man, I can't imagine there's going to be a sense of like that try-hardy humor, like that, just like we're pushing the line here with these sex jokes, maybe drop a swear word or two to test the waters and see how it goes. But I can't imagine how embarrassed I would feel if I was there. And I would love to be there.
Oh, I would be there for all the wrong reasons, right? Like just the cringe-worthy comedy. I just think like, name me one funny Christian comedian.
Oh, Mark Lowry slaps.
Here's the thing. I don't know. And that this is an honest, like, you tell me. I could be wrong.
What if I have such a funny story about that. I'll hold on to it.
Should you hold on to it? Is it relevant, or do you mean for now, for later, for another episode?
Yeah. We'll circle back to it. I don't want to distract from Jerry.
Okay. Yeah, I actually don't. I'm trying to think of Bill Cosby, right? He was.
Chris, you know what? He was known for his love of and for Jesus.
I think if anything, Jesus can separate the art from the artist. So
yeah. And if there's one thing him and Jesus had in common, it was their hatred of saggy jeans. So I'm sure they saw eye to eye on that. and that rap music.
So Jerry has to be like, just from because I remember when we were going to Liberty and some of the public like addresses that Jerry gave, he's awkward anyways. I mean, he's got to rank like right up there with Elon Musk in terms of just like social awkwardness and just bad timing with this kind of stuff. yeah, I don't understand like why he was there in the first place, and who was supposed to be there to just sort of like keep him at bay? Because somebody had to have. They're like, oh wait, you're going where? Okay, all right, well I'll go with you. Somebody, like, so many people had to let that video happen, and the people deserve the full video.
We do.
I bet Trey drove him. His son. Trey. Okay, so for people who don't know, Trey was he was like a high-ranking dude at Liberty. What was it? Do you remember what his position was, Luke?
No, I don't. I can check that though.
It was like it's like the producer here. You're just like,
he was like executor of no bid contracts.
Yeah,
he was Liberty vice president.
That's crazy.
What?
VP at Liberty University.
And he
That's
got
insane.
shit-canned.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went out with a boom like his dad.
And that's what's funny is like it was clearly nepotism that got him there. It wasn't. I mean, I knew people who knew him that worked with him. Like, I had worked with a lot of people who worked. I mean, I had been friends with a lot of people who worked at Liberty, just because I worked there. And nobody liked him. They just like were cool with him because you kind of had to be. And he would just kind of run around, bossing people around. There was a building at Liberty's campus that he had at one point turned into like his own personal gym, and it was structurally unsound for it. I have this on. It's from a very solid source who worked there and had to do work in the building, and it was because it was a structurally unsound building for all that weight equipment, because it was up on like a mezzanine, some sort of second floor. It was like they were told they had to get rid of it, and so people came in to start moving all the equipment out, and then Trey was like, "What are you guys doing?" And they're like, "We've been told to move this out. It's not safe. It's a violation." And he was like, "I don't care. This is my gym," and he made them put it all back.
It was actually the new visitor center, like that newly remodeled building. He's like, "That's going to be my gym, and no one's going to." Trey, no, he was. I knew his freshman year roommate because he was a year ahead of me. He roomed with someone I knew, and a lot of stories came out of that bedroom. But I mean, not in sexual. That sounded very suggestive, but I didn't mean that at all. No, but. What you were saying before about Jerry? Yeah, Jerry's when he spoke publicly, he was kind of like that weird uncle, right? That got up and would like his voice would crack, or he always did sound a little drunk, and you're always like, that. And now, of course, like that kind of makes sense if in fact he was drunk, but he would just like he's possibly one of the worst public speakers ever, right? Like. For one of my articles I once wrote, I quoted him verbatim, and it's cringeworthy, like the way that he constructed or didn't construct, depending on how you define it, a sentence. And it was just like, Jerry, like, you got to take like comms 101, like, please, sir, like, step up your public speaking skills.
It reminds me of a guy we had as president once. Where you
didn't have to take the show down that low.
Yeah.
Who to say me?
I feel like there's a few now. Like George W. Bush wasn't exactly a killer public speaker.
He was not, and he made up words, but he didn't make up sentence structures quite as much as our most recent. Like when you would see transcripts of his and you would just read them out loud, you're like, you must have failed third grade, right? No, you didn't. Oh, you got millions of dollars and built an empire that fucked over tens of thousands of people. That's pretty sweet. Right. Anyway, this isn't a political show, right, Casey?
Right. Yeah. So the whole thing is just bizarre. And like, so watching that Young Turks video, something that I didn't realize, because I knew that the university was suing Jerry Jr. And you might be able to elaborate a little more on the actual terms of the suit, but basically he renegotiated his severance package and stuff preemptively before all this came out to include like if I'm fired or if I'm forced to resign because of like an embarrassing circumstance or something like that. Like, do you know the language that they used in that whole thing?
No, I don't know exactly what it was, but I do know that, yeah, there was some shifty, shady dealings that happened beforehand that would have been red flags to a lot of, maybe not just a lot of the world, but maybe everyone else but the board of trustees at Liberty University, that something was going to become, happening soon. But I still, to this day, it's my favorite thing that Jerry first sued Liberty, which of course in its own right, hilarious. Like, Jerry, like, Liberty didn't ruin your reputation, you ruined your reputation. But then we have Jerry then drops the lawsuit, and what does Liberty do? They turn right around and sue him, like, plot twist, gotcha. Like, what a move. What a bold move, LU. Like, I'm not saying I'm not there for it. But maybe just as much as I would say about Jerry Jr.'s reputation not being ruined by Liberty, I don't think Liberty's reputation was ruined by Jerry. I think that work was done years before, perhaps when the school was created in 1971 by Jerry's father, and the character card, whatever you want to call him, that he was. I think it was at that point that Liberty's reputation was ruined. So this whole premise that Jerry Jr. is the one who's ruined Liberty's reputation, I think they have to go back to the drawing board here and reevaluate a lot.
Yeah, they were able to. He's an easy fall guy, right? Because until him and his just how vocal he was about everything, and how he just seemingly didn't think before he he just didn't care. He really didn't care. He would just say how he felt, and then he would occasionally be like, well, that's just my personal opinion, that's not the stance of Liberty, as though you're allowed to separate the two when you're the one in fucking charge.
Yeah.
But then, like, he was an easy fall guy after a while. I mean, this has been going on for a long time, but up until then, none of those beliefs were verbalized. They were like carefully worded on paper. They would talk about the way they would invite people to convo, and because they often brought in political people, but they would be very upfront about how, we invited this person or that person, and they were off, like, whether they're a Democrat or just a little bit more liberal, like, and people would turn them down because, of course, like, what Democrat's going to show up to a Liberty University convocation? None, really. But who did once? Luke, you must have been at Liberty.
I wasn't there when Bernie Sanders came, but Bernie Sanders did come.
And he got, like, booed and shit, right?
Yeah. And I just love it that Liberty tries to play this game that they're like, we invite everyone. It's like, Liberty, come on. Like, the world's not stupid. Like, give me a break. Like, in the same way that you don't have, like Ted Cruz being invited to, like, Yale, like, Liberty, you're not inviting all these other people. So the very fact that he did show up, so, like, yes, they invited him and he showed up, but it was this whole, like, PR stunt that they're like, look at us, we're not, like, we're bipartisan, like, we're for everyone. It's like, what charade is this, my friends? Like, we know the truth. Like, enough. Like, can it already?
I know. I love that Bernie showed up, though, because what does that show about? Like, not to be a political podcast, but even the people I know who are extremely conservative, I've never heard them attack Bernie's character. There's a kind of a level of respect for him as a guy who's always stood by his values. And they like, I never really heard the mudslinging from the people in my life who were conservative that would never in a million years vote for him, but had, have a lot of things to say about other Democratic candidates.
Although,
and
I think they would use the S word, the socialist word.
Oh yeah.
I remember when I was at Liberty,
he uses that word too.
First class I was in, or one of my first classes, it was an American history class. And the professor gets up there and he says, he's talking about whatever. And all of a sudden he's like, and socialism. And I look at the gal sitting next to me. I still remember her name was Christina. And I said, I looked at her, and this is like, I was like 18. So I just, I didn't really know too much about what socialism was. But I had been told for a long time that Canadians are socialists. So I looked at her, I said, hey, I'm a socialist. And she looks at me and she goes, oh, okay. Like, there's like very Southern Belle, like, oh, all right, okay. And then the professor keeps talking and he's going on about the evils of socialism and the millions of people who have died in the name of socialism and because of socialism. and he's going on about all these awful things about socialism, and I'm like, oh shoot, like, and I looked at Christina, I was like, I was just kidding, like I'm not really a socialist. But then I found out years later that like Liberty's understanding of socialist versus, socialist, in reality, I think they're quite different things.
Oh yeah, they're like, if anything that happened under like extreme dictatorships in communist countries, they're like, that also counts as socialism.
Socialist is just a pretty word for communist.
Yeah.
Nazi stands for National Socialist Party. It's like, yes, just like Democratic Republic of North Korea.
Yeah, yeah, right.
It's almost like it's window dressing.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. Agree with him or not, like Bernie's a boss. Just, I don't feel like I have hardly anything in common with him politically, but like, I just love that guy's, just his, just stuff like that. Like showing up in an obviously hostile place and just there to try to make some allies, that's what's great about him.
Yeah. And there were probably plenty of people there who are fine with it or into it or like gave it a chance. But the fact that like he couldn't show up without being booed is it's just a little much like that. But then of course I remember, what school was it? I think it was a school in New England. It was like a prestigious school was going to have that. Who's that neo-Nazi Yiannopoulos guy, whatever, the gay
Wasn't
neo-Nazi?
it Berkeley that he was supposed to be at?
Yeah,
I think so. Maybe it was Berkeley. I don't know why I said New England. It might have been that. And then there was this whole thing, right? Like he can't talk here. We don't want people like this, which, I think makes sense. I mean, you can draw those lines in the sand. I think people want to make false comparisons between being a conservative school and not wanting just like a middle of the road Democrat versus being like having a guy like that. Like I would argue that even if you're a conservative school, that's not the kind of guy who should be showing up and teaching or talking at all, because he's clearly problematic. But I remember the uproar of people being like, this is the world we live in now. Like, and that, like, I remember the cancel culture conversation happening all around that. Like, you can't even have different opinions anymore. It's like, you can have different opinions, but then there are things called facts, and some people are just wrong about things and dangerous, and we should probably not give them a fucking platform.
That guy's he's just a shock jock. I would love to talk to him at some point, because now he's a fully converted Christian and he's decided that he's not gay.
And did you see that he threw his engagement ring into the ocean?
Oh, that's cool. Kind of like that old lady from Titanic.
Precisely. Yeah.
It's like right that, but twice as romantic.
Yeah. and then someone just drew him nude in the bottom of the ship. But, and there was like a steamy moment in the carriage. But that's besides the point. That was something totally different.
Oh, dude, that shift, it's hilarious to watch people make those shifts. Maybe we'll see Jerry do it too, where he'll like come around and have a big apology. I don't know that his ego would allow for that, but it's like for him to just be like, look, I'm saved now and I'm the celibate gay. It's all good now. Praise be to Jesus. It's like, who's buying that? People who want to buy it.
I have two hopes, and they are mutually exclusive for Jerry, or maybe not. We could maybe weave together a narrative that these could both happen. But two desires. One, that he does have this like completely repentant moment, and like everyone's just like, oh yes, Jerry, yes, because it's just like, how often does that happen? So it's like, that's just kind of like a very like common trope that we see with like evangelicals who are just like, actually, Jesus. And all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, it's fine. All the craziness that they did is totally fine. Let's absolve them. Or that Jerry's just like, because it's very clear that Jerry in so many ways does not identify with Liberty University's sort of ethos. And, he's obviously, he's having a pretty wild sex life, or maybe not, because again, he's sitting in the corner. But do we really believe that he was just sitting in the corner? We don't really know, but we have our thoughts. But I just think to myself, like, and he's drinking a lot and he's doing all this other stuff. And it's like, from a lot of stories and accounts, like, it seems like he's not really in line with liberty. But it's almost like, Jerry, why don't you just come clean? And it's almost like, I feel like there'd be more forgiveness for you if you were just like, nah, you're right. Like, I never really should have been there and I should have been, left years ago. I kind of hope that happens too. Like, and I wonder if it's going to be a both and moment where he has that like religious moment and also he's like, just kidding. And then like, plot twist back over to like, the dark side. I truly do wonder like what's next for Jerry.
He's either got to go full on like disgraced televangelist and like, I can't remember the name of the one that did that big speech after getting caught with hookers and stuff where he's like, I have sinned before God. You know which one I'm talking about?
Ted Haggard?
Ted Haggard, yes. Okay,
he was doing meth with gay prostitutes. We remember him.
This is just way more exciting than Jerry's story, though. And see, that's part of why I worry is like maybe he's just a little too bland because he's a bland person and this is a bland controversy. But I think the other thing that he could do is just lean into the role. Like, yeah, you know what? I like to get drunk. I like to, kind of Winston Churchill it and just own the whole thing. And I feel like he could come out on top if he were to do that. But like what nobody wants to see is him like sue liberty and paint himself as a victim. And I don't know. It's just the traditional way of handling this is not the way that's going to get him any sort of like clemency with any audience.
It's true.
Yeah. Watching people who were handed an empire play the victim doesn't really work super good, but not in like you lack empathy for people like that. You're like, bitch, you had so much opportunity and chance and you fucked the whole thing.
Dude, he needs to go like full on Pharma Bro. You remember Pharma Bro?
No.
Oh, the guy that like raised the cost of of insulin by 300%, some drug by crazy percentages, and he was just like, "Yeah, I like making money. That's what I do." Like everyone hates him, but he's around.
Yeah.
Like if he would have apologized and talked about lowering it and lowered it by like 50%, which is still 3,000% above what it should be. Like he wouldn't be around. We wouldn't remember his pseudonym Pharma Bro.
I mean, we didn't anyway. So that's props to you, man, for keeping tabs on these dangerous capitalists, I guess.
It seems like there's definitely no rhyme or reason to the things that my hard drive saves.
Yeah, we've come into a lot of moments where you say something or reference something, and I'm like, you're gonna have to explain that one. It's lost on me. I don't
Nothing
remember
makes me happier than making an obscure reference that only one audience member gets and appreciates.
But when you do have those moments where someone does like point out, they're like, "Oh, you just quoted UHF, that like classic Weird Al movie." You're like, "You know that movie?" Like it makes it worth it, eh? It just makes
it's the best.
It really does. Okay, I don't know. I feel like we're right on the end of this intro here, but I don't know if there's anything else to exhaust before we move on to introduce our guest here.
Could I tell my story I've been incubating?
Yes,
an old hen. Okay, so my company, a great company. I'll leave their name out of it, but very conservative. Okay, I don't think on paper they label themselves as like a Christian company, but it's very clearly like what it is. Very like traditional American values. They say the Pledge of Allegiance at meetings. They pray, that sort of thing, and great people all the way around. But we have these distributor conventions once a year. Obviously not last year, but traditionally it's once a year we have a distributor convention. It's like a week of meetings, and then the last day they have a big banquet where they do like a fancy dinner. Everybody dresses up, and usually they would have like a special speaker of some sort, right? Sometimes it's like the traditional like motivational dude, which is by far my least favorite. Sometimes they'll have someone who's a pillar in the industry come in and talk. Lately, we've had politicians and stuff like, oh God, the guy who was the head of the EPA that kind of got ousted in shame under Trump.
Stellar reference.
Never
there.
mind. Never mind. But one year they brought in a comedian. Okay, now there's a Christian comedian, and his name is Tim Hawkins. Okay. And Tim Hawkins, I don't know what his comedy's like, but he's a Christian comedian. Draw whatever conclusion you want. I assume it's pretty tame, right? That's who they wanted to book. Who they booked was a comedian named Tim Wilson. And if anybody's listened to Bob and Tom or any of those like morning shows, Tim Wilson was like on the circuit with those morning shows. He's like a dirty, drunken roadhouse comic. And, it's just been like, he actually died not too long after this incident, it was really sad. I ate dinner with him. He was a nice guy, but,
your company had him murdered. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean that.
I mean, we can't rule out any possibilities, but, we're eating dinner and he's sitting at our table and he's obviously uncomfortable. And the more like you listen to comedians on podcasts and stuff, they hate these corporate gigs with a passion. It's just the worst for him, right? So he's not having a good time anyways, but they're asking him questions. They're like, so, what's your performance schedule look like? Like, where are you usually performing? He's like, well, I like bars, I like comedy clubs and stuff, but I like the roadhouse places and all this. And just slowly putting the pieces together and some of the language and stuff like that, like, I'm really surprised that they brought this guy in. So he gets on stage after this whole thing, and it was rough.
You didn't clean it up for a corporate gig?
I just think he had no idea. Like, they had no idea and he had no idea. And like, never before had an F-bomb been uttered at one of these conventions before. And we crossed that hurdle like 40 times. And there's old ladies that got up and walked out. Like, there's people like, I don't think anybody booed, but nobody clapped and very few people laughed. And it was like it was a 30-minute set that felt like 3 hours. I can't imagine how horrible it was for him, but dude, it was out of control. I was kind of giggling and just looking around and just seeing just scowling faces in every direction.
Was this like the scene from the Joker, the new movie, the Joaquin Phoenix Joker, where he's up there and he's making like jokes and like no one's laughing, and then he starts like hysterically laughing and then he starts like dying, and then it's like, you're like, oh my God, like I cannot take this tension. Was it one of those moments?
It was like the Joker short of he didn't shoot my dad in the face. I can't imagine he didn't like leave there telling people that story until the day he died. Like, I did the corporate gig from hell.
Yeah, because most comics have a corporate gig story. A lot of them do. I've heard them repeated from certain comics that I follow time and time again. Be like, oh, this one time I did this horrible corporate gig. So maybe he was telling it. Did your company have to put out an apology? Did they mention it?
I think my dad fielded complaints for a long, long time.
Yeah. That's unbelievable, dude.
Poor guy.
Oh my God. All right. Well, we're kind of running out of time here, but so our guest today is coming up is a guy named Brad Harker. He is from Australia, so you get to listen to his very enjoyable accent, but he calls himself a Peacock Mormon. He has an incredible story about coming out and leaving the Mormon. I guess he doesn't consider himself as an apostate, or he hasn't left the Mormon church, but he still considers himself a member. As he mentions, he calls himself a Peacock Mormon. But he started this, him and some other, gay Mormons who started really trying to fight for, marriage equality in Australia and across the world, and make changes, push the Mormon church to roll back some of the anti-gay, bylaws, laws, whatever you would call them. I'm not sure how their structure or hierarchy works entirely, but
it was like agreed upon doctrine almost.
Yeah.
And it's
it
recent.
was kind of,
It's not something that's historically been a part of their like stated doctrine. This is only like in the past, I don't remember when, 30 years or so that they explicitly stated like they did not support homosexuality and stuff like that. So
yeah,
it's not out of the question by any means for them to update their doctrinal statement to be more inclusive.
Right. So that's what he's been all about. He started by, bringing awareness to it and who he is and what they're trying to do by marching in the Australian Mardi Gras parade. So they would dress up in traditional Mormon outfits, but then, as time went on, they would mix it up a bit and have these more showy, flashy floats and attire and things like that. So they've done a lot and they've brought a lot of awareness to it. And this year they had their big thing was, religions around the world. So they're moving on from just doing it within the Mormon circuit and trying to, just bring awareness to the idea that there's a lot of gay people who might even still identify with their faith that are looking for acceptance and to try to push those religious institutions in that direction. He's a wonderful guy. We really enjoyed the conversation. And I think everybody else will too. So enjoy the conversation with Brad and Luke. Thanks so much for hanging out with us and just goofing around.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. Always fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Enjoy our conversation with Brad Harker.
Hey, everybody. We're back with our guest today, Brad Harker. Brad, thanks so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate you being here today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you guys for having me, Sam and Casey. It's really exciting to come from Australia and to be on the show.
Yeah, I know. There's a little bit of distance between us. We actually got connected with you, as I mentioned, but just for the listeners a little bit, we have a listener in Australia we've been talking with. She's in our Discord channel, and she sent us your story and sent us a couple articles about what you guys were doing over there, and that's when we realized we were just super excited to check it out and hear from you on it. So why don't we, before we get into like kind of your background and how you got to where you are, you kind of organized and started up what is originally was started out as the Peacock Mormons, but then just became known as the Peacocks. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we were just a group of Mormons that had been ostracized or, were gay, basically, or transgender or bisexual or whatever. And, we've been experiencing, being ostracized, being cut off, basically. So we got together as a small group and we marched 2 years ago in the Sydney Mardi Gras, which is one of the world's biggest Mardi Gras parades. And we marched as elder equalities. So, we put the badge on and we had the missionary attire. And when we did that, we sent 100 letters to the prophet in America asking them to remove the gay hate policies that they had in place.
Okay. So most of our background here is evangelical Christian is the majority of it. So when there's not a whole lot known for us about the Mormon church and its hierarchy. So when you say you sent letters to the prophet, what is that? Do you want to just let us know what that means a little bit? Because
we sent right over my head. It was mainly my husband. He got online and he checked out all of the authorities in Utah, where their home base is. Their home base is in Utah. And I believe it was the prophet's name at the time was Hinckley. But we sent to every single authority that we could find, basically. And it ended up being 100 letters. And we were part of a global effort to change the perception or some of these gay hate policies that the Mormon church were, teetering with and using in their church and using with the gay community. And it was really quite horrible. It was something that came about after the marriage equality win in America occurred. So they started these new policies, the Mormon church, and they were I label them as hate policies. And we said, look, you really should remove them. You should change them.
Interesting.
Every place is about love. This is about love now, the world. And, if we want to get along, try to get along and try to see our perception of this gay hate policies that you have.
And they have kind of a history with that, because I remember like California was going to legalize same-sex marriage. Yes. I think that was Proposition 8. Like
absolutely.
Back, it's been a while. And the Mormon church spent millions of dollars to get that turned, and it didn't pass, if I remember right.
Correct. They lost, and they are one of the wealthiest churches in the world, and they spent millions upon millions of dollars fighting against marriage equality, and they lost. And out of that loss, they created within their church gay hate policies, I call them. In other words, they were policies that really kind of stabbed us in the back, us, the gay community. They labeled us as people that are astray, basically, from the church. They labeled us as, if you wanted to have your kids get baptized and your parents happened to be gay, they wouldn't allow it. So they put a policy in that disallowed baptisms for kids with gay parents, which was really awful. It was a stab in the back, the policies, and they were protested in Utah, and we protested them in Australia with 100 letters that we sent to the authorities.
Are those policies? I mean, are they new? Was there like those feelings before, and they just put it in writing finally?
Yeah, they put it in writing, black and white, and released them into their church, and a lot of their members didn't like it. So the members were against it, and there was a global swell against this awful thing that they had done. And we joined it in Australia, and we joined it by, having 80 elder equalities march in the Sydney Lesbian and Gay Mardi Gras in Sydney. And it was a really momentous occasion. And only to find out that 2 years after our march in Sydney, they completely removed and axed the 2 gay hate policies that were in place.
Nice.
That's great. I mean, that feels like a big step forward, coming from evangelical culture. And there's a lot of, it doesn't quite have the same structure as the Mormon church, but it is, even though there's little pop-ups everywhere, everyone's kind of doing their own thing. Everyone's most of the evangelical community is pretty much on that same page of, they'll let you go to church there, something like that. But, don't expect to ever really be a part of it in any serious way until you change, because that's part of their message, is thinking that maybe you can change. So I think
evangelicals are a lot more forthright about who they don't like.
Yeah. I see them on the street corners sometimes with their signs and stuff.
You got those too.
Yeah, we've experienced them, and unfortunately our Prime Minister, who's the head of the country at the moment, is evangelical, and he comes from that background, so he sort of poses a bit of a threat to the LGBTQ community. So we experience that at the moment. But then, in a pandemic, the threat kind of goes away and the focus is shifted into the pandemic at the moment.
Yeah. So, Brett, the juxtaposition of how you grew up and where you're at now is obviously quite stark. So you grew up your entire life in the Mormon church. Is that right?
Absolutely. I'm 6th generation Mormon, Canadian born, but Australian reared and growing up in Australia all my life. But 6th generation Mormon. So we date right back to polygamy, when the Mormons had polygamy. We date back to all that kind of stuff. It's in my heritage. It's in my blood. Wow. And I baptized 60 people. So I was a believer, you could say, in the early days of my life. And I was a Mormon missionary. And, I had 4 kids. I had 2 kids to one wife and 2 to another wife. And then I have 1 husband now. So, and 4 kids and 2 ex-wives. So that's my cycle of life. And then I finally came out only 8 years ago.
Wow. 8 years ago. That I can't. So what? I mean, other than just it being a bit of, I'm sure there's a bit of a pressure cooker feeling of kind of holding that in. Was there while you were, growing up in the church and baptizing people as a Mormon missionary, getting married? Was it always something you felt like, because of your connection to the faith and their teaching on it, felt like,
Well,
was it something you were ever vocal about at any point, or was it always something you kind of
I
just
was
suppressed?
repressed for most of my life, the first part of my life, the first, 2/3 of my life, basically. And I repressed it and kept it inside. I knew I was gay inside. I knew I was attracted to men. And, I couldn't act on it because the church teaches you it's a grave, a hideous sin and you're going to hell. And if you believe in heaven and hell, that's a shameful thing to suddenly believe you're going to go to hell because you're gay. So you don't come out, you stay in the closet and you do what they think is the right thing to do. And you want to please them. And so you get married, you have kids, and you do this charade for your life. And then suddenly, I chose and decided that I had to come out and vocalize and say, look, I'm gay and I'm proud of this. And I had to do it to my family, and my family are all Mormon. And my mum wrote me a letter and asked me to stay in the closet. And all these things happen that are anti-gay from the Mormon perspective. And getting over that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, with your entire life being wrapped in the church and being so tightly a part of that, I mean, a lot of us, and a lot of the people that we talk to through this podcast, and a lot of the experience of our listeners is really even just dealing with the difficulty of having a conversation with family about the loss of faith. And I bet for a lot of families that might not be as difficult of a conversation as their child telling them they're gay, only because they might come back to the faith later, but the gay thing kind of sticks,
The gay thing sticks, and it means you're classified as going to hell sudden. So in their world, they believe they're not going to be together with a family in the afterlife if you're gay, basically. So you're ostracized from the family forever. So it's not just in this life or the life that we're living in now, it's in the future life of your afterlife. You're living with God, so to speak, if you're a Mormon, because, only Mormons go to heaven and can live with God. In their world, that's what they believe. They truly believe. And you can't be with your son that's gay. I'm sorry, but he's going to hell in their books.
Yeah.
So when you came out, were you immediately ostracized from the church, or was it a process? Or
it was a process. Just imagine a giant pendulum swinging from one end to the other end. That's my life. It was a pendulum process. So it was a process of coming out and a process of believing inside that it wasn't actually true, learning and understanding that the Mormon church wasn't true or not believing it anymore. And then finally to coming out as gay at the age of 42, and then advocating for LGBTQ rights and doing that on a global stage. Advocating for marriage equality in Australia. We were a big part of that, my husband and I. And, I love it. And it's like I'm serving a mission now, but I'm serving it for the LGBTQIA plus community. And it's no longer for the Mormon church. It's for them.
So you left the church as well, though? Like that your faith is done?
Halfway through that pendulum ride. So halfway through, so probably at the age of 30, I left the church physically, but it didn't still come out for another 10 years after that.
I'm making assumptions here, so you can redirect if I'm off base. I'm assuming being gay had something to do with your marriage, your first two marriages not working out. Yeah. With the second one, how long after your second marriage did you come out? Was that?
It was only a year. It was like a year or something. I came out. We didn't break up because of being gay. We broke up because we fell out of love, and the normal things that people deal with in their life. But I was always attracted to men, and I knew that I could only date men and have a relationship with a man at that point in my life. And that's when I told my parents that I was gay. I told my kids that I was gay, and told everyone in the world online, and every tool I could use to tell them I was gay. And I was happy and proud of that.
Wow.
So there was no turning back at that point. Yeah. No turning back.
What was that like? What was it harder having that conversation with your parents or with your children?
It was, Mum cried. It was hard with Mum. With the kids, they supported me. They've grown up in a much more different and more accepting environment these days than what we grew up in the 80s, or I grew up in the 80s. It's more accepting, it's more loving, and more, equal rights to people. And that generation is going to do something really special, I believe, with the future. But with my mum, she cried, and she asked me to stay in the closet, and wrote a letter and said, "Could you please stay in the closet, Brad?" And I couldn't. I'd already pressed send on Facebook with a picture with me and my boyfriend at the time. And, so I made it online. And she came around, and she voted yes for marriage equality in Australia. It took her a couple of years, but she came around, and she now has gay cushions in her house and advocates it, even though she attends church and is a Mormon still, practicing Mormon. My dad voted no, though, unfortunately, and I still have struggles with my dad, a little bit of conflict, although I love him dearly and we get along as well. But, it's hard. They have to be rewired, the generation, and also coming from a Christian background, they need to be rewired to understand that gay is okay, truly okay, and truly accepting, fully accepting. I'm not just talking, gay okay, it's okay, I accept you, it's a verbal agreement, to really love and to say it's absolutely fantastic, and I'm going to be with you in heaven, next to God in the future, if there is a God, and it's going to be great, and I'm going to be there with my gay son.
There's a definite it like what you're saying, that gay is okay and actually okay, and it I could totally see that difference that you're talking about, because I've heard so many times over the years from my friends that maybe they aren't even religious, they're just stuck in that old mentality where they're like, look, man, I don't care what people do, just don't tell me about it. That's that's not the same as being like, it's fine to be gay, this is a perfectly legitimate route to choose in life. It's hard to get people over that hump, and it's even harder if they're steeped in religious nonsense.
It's a rewiring process, and it might not occur. My dad might not agree that gay is okay in his lifetime, and that's what I have to live with. I have to live with that and accept that in order to be able to move on. It doesn't stop me from dressing up in feathers and glitter and showing him the photographs. We just come from the Mardi Gras, check out the gold and the feathers, and he goes, "Oh, come on, show me what you've got in the car. I know you've got it, flat packed, ready for the Mardi Gras. I want to check it out." And so, there's some level of acceptance there, but rewiring is another thing, and we can only have hope.
Yeah, time and exposure is a big one. I mean, the amount of times that the stories I've heard of people changing their mind on this is just simply someone they love coming out and then realizing that they have to shift. It's too close to home to not. And they don't always, of course, but it seems like the number one factor in whether or not people change their minds. It comes before
if
theology.
You're connected to someone, absolutely.
Yeah. That being said, there is something sadistically fun about disappointing your dad once in a while. Once in a while, you got to poke him a little bit.
Absolutely, it's outrageous what we do to our parents.
Did your mom face any issues with as she's still part of the church, right? So did that cause any issues for her?
She'll stand in front of the flag and get a picture taken, the gay flag, and I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of her. She's come a long way. It's beautiful to see, and she hasn't been ostracized by the church because of her beliefs. She stands up for them. And everyone knows her son is gay, and he's in the Harker clan, our family. I'm one of the only out gays, openly out. So yeah, that's a big family, 6th generation Mormon. There's a lot of them. There's 1,000 or so of them. And I've tried to help them as well. Even online, when you're online, you might help out with a photograph every couple of weeks. A gay photograph or a photograph kissing your husband. A beautiful photograph, which in the straight world is perfectly fine. It's people, they accept that that's okay, but in their world, it's not acceptable, and it could be quite shocking for them to be confronted with a photograph of two men kissing.
Yeah.
So what was like the impetus for getting involved in the event and stuff like that to where you actually became like an activist?
Yeah, well, when I came out, I felt like I had ripped off the gay community by being closeted and not being true to myself. I felt like I had turned my back on them. And I promised from that point onwards that I would never turn my back on the gay community ever again, that I would advocate 110%, give everything, all of my life, to advocating that gay is okay and helping the community in Australia and globally and doing whatever I could do to get that point across.
So I think that's beautiful. The shift in commitment there, and I guess going alongside that and feeling the commitment to creating a better world for LGBTQ couples, people is obviously one of the biggest obstacles to that is often people of faith. So I guess I'm wondering how you obviously you left the church. I guess I'm wondering how you feel about it, and if it's something that you struggle with, like resentment or bitterness towards, or
no, I don't. I feel a lot of compassion towards the Mormon Church and the followers, and I think that a lot of them are very good people. I believe that most of them and most of the congregation are starting to really advocate and feel that gays should be more accepted in their churches, and they should find a place for gay people, and they should allow them to have relationships and allow them to get married and allow them to believe that they're going to go to heaven someday and live together with their families. And I have no malice or no hatred or I don't feel that at all. Nothing but love and just a genuine wanting them to think about it and have a heart change and have them rewire themselves to believe and understand and know that gay is okay. In fact, it's fantastic. It's fantastic because you can be true to yourself and live your life honestly, and it is fantastic. Trust me.
Yeah, I think the irony of what you're saying is the way you're communicating that compassion, that desire for a heart change from those people. That is that's the same kind of language, the same kind of Christian language that, I'm familiar with and grew up with.
It is.
That you would apply to the secular world or the quote unquote lost. And when I hear it coming from people who have been even burned by those people, and hearing it come from you like that, I think that's beautiful. And I think that is the message. That was the purpose. And I find people like you actualizing that purpose and that message in a more realistic and meaningful way to build that kind of a world.
Yeah,
so
it's ironic. We use the colored rainbow, which is the ultimate symbol of Christianity. We use the words in our community of love, and that that love is important. We use all these words and we believe in them in the gay community. And we have the rainbow flag. We have these legacies that have come from the roots of Christianity. And it's absolutely ironic.
My church was really upset that you used those.
Very upset.
They talked about it.
Very upset. And you know what? We still do use them. And they're beautiful. And, we have to use them because we've historically been invisible as a community. And, you can't tell if someone's gay on the street, really. We don't come from a minority that has coloured skin, for example, right? So we've been invisible historically. So what do we do to become visible? We start creating these things like rainbows and beautiful words like love, and we have glitter and we have sequins, and we get dressed up in ridiculous feathered outfits to advocate and show our sexuality openly and to visually stimulate it, to make it visible and no longer invisible.
Yeah, man, I've never actually thought, and this is probably just bad on my part, I've never made the connection like that. I've never really considered that being the connection, the sequence, the extravagance of it is being a connection to visibility. All I know is my children are obsessed with sequins. Half the stuff has sequins on it, so I don't know what that means. But
I'll rub it from our community. It's yeah.
Do you make your own outfits for those events?
Yeah, I sure do. I sew them. I have some sewers that help as well with the glitter and the sequins and all that kind of stuff. And I've been doing it for 8 years. It was a sharp transition from executive world, managing huge Westfield shopping centres. And, I started the GameStop network in Australia. So I came from an executive world where you wore white shirts and ties, a little bit more like the Mormons. And I went from that to wearing underwear and feathers off my shoulders and sequins all over my body and advocating that gay was okay. And I was doing it to everyone. I did it to my entire network of friends, and I put my credibility on the line when I did that. And I tell you what, I've had the most fun I've ever had in my entire life as a result. Yeah.
So one of the listener that Sam was talking about that's from Australia was giving us kind of a snapshot of Australia's like political / religious climate right now. And obviously like the US has this long history of like religion kind of pushing its way into politics and stuff. Is Australia the same way, or is this like a new chapter that you guys are having to worry about?
It does try to follow the same culture as the US, Australia. They're not as, I don't think they're as open about their religion. They're probably a little bit more private as a culture. But, with a prime minister that's evangelical and goes to church and prays openly and claps his hands and gets all excited in church, I can understand where those comments are coming from, that Australian that you're talking about. And I can understand maybe they're a bit concerned about it. I am. Some of the laws they've tried to introduce in Australia, we're advocating against religious protection laws, they call them, to protect themselves against the gays, basically. It's just a load of rubbish. They don't need any protection whatsoever. We're not going out to hurt anyone. We're not trying to hurt the religions of the world. We're just trying to advocate that gay is okay, and there's nothing wrong with it. And they want to be able to advocate shoot back. You know what I mean? Kind of stab you back, or stab you, or shoot you, or whatever. There's no need for conflict. There really isn't. We need to get along. It's time to get along. It's time to heal, and it's time for the communities to heal in the future. I believe, and I believe that forgiveness is a trait that really should be taken on board by both cultures, both the LGBTQIA plus and the religions of the world.
Here, like the Mormon Church, we have such a big network of like conservative religious communities, and the Mormon Church is sort of a minority community in that framework. Like, what about in Australia? I mean, are they a big part of the conservative movement there?
They're a part of some political factions. So, in other words, we have some Mormons that are getting on board with some of the parties in Australia. But the Mormon Church is a small church in Australia, if that's what you're asking, like in terms of just
right, okay,
the size of it compared to the US. In the US, it's like ranks number 3 or 4, I think, out of all the Christian churches in size. In Australia, it probably ranks in the 25th position in size. So it doesn't have as much influence, but they're pretty high profile. Everyone understood what a Mormon missionary was when we dressed as them, elder equalities, and marched down the street. They all got it, and everyone got it and applauded and thought it was great and fantastic, from the LGBTQ community to the religious community to the general community. They got a good, maybe a bit of a laugh out of it. It was a bit cheeky, and then we did Peacock Mormons again this year. It was more angels with wings and things like that. But yeah, it's people know the church. They know it in religious factions, but is it overwhelmingly large? No, I would say not. Not in Australia.
Sounds like it's like 60% Harker then.
Yes. It's a Harker house of love and joy.
There we go.
It sounds like the costumes were a lot more fun to make this year than
they were a lot more fun, let me tell you. Oh my gosh. We were angels with there was religious characters. We had the nuns and the Pope figurehead, all delivering beautiful words, and the words were beautiful. We used Christian words, and we asked the community what words were most meaningful during the pandemic, and they came back with about 12 words were the most highlighted and the most, prevalent to people at the moment: hope, peace, joy, love. All these kind of words that are Christian, ironically, but we use them to deliver them to the world and to give hope that we can get through the pandemic and that we can get through everything, and we can sort of come together with the religious community and be with them as well, and not just be separated from them.
Yeah, that's such an interesting and fascinating approach. There's so much. Understandably so, but there's a lot of, especially here. I mean, it sounds like there as well, probably a global issue, but the tension, right? So even right now in the U.S., we have a lot of things. There's a recent Supreme Court decision that allows. Oh God, I can't even.
I think it's transgender. Was it transgender? I think that they're not allowing them in the military. There's a whole heap of hoo-ha about that in the US.
No, okay. So this one was it had to do with what you're like. It was just kind of an anti-discriminatory ruling, but that was at the Supreme Court. So what that kind of did was open things up for case law, and that to be referenced when trying to introduce anti-discrimination laws and such. So, but right now it feels like tensions are a little bit high again, and it seems to come in waves. But you end up with a lot of people, regardless of their even sexual orientation, but just whether it's allies or anything, having this feeling of like the world would be better off without you. And there's a lot of anger and it makes sense. But I think hearing what you're saying and the way that you're portraying yourselves and what you're doing with the parade, have you experienced personally through that people coming to shift in their ideas about their acceptance?
Yeah, I have. We had a Mormon lady, join our parade. She came from a Mormon background, and she wanted to join the parade. Just to be a part of it and to be a part of advocating that gay is okay. And I think that her child, as you were saying before, is saying or having issues with, saying I think I'm gay or something's going on here. So she joined our parade and she marched with us valiantly. And there are people like that every day, all the time, that I'm coming across that are saying, hey, it's okay. They contact me privately. They contact me on Facebook. They contact me in lots of different ways. And they say, look, a lot of times it is because their kids are questioning or whatever, and that seems to be the case. When you're close to it, that's when you're, more in tune. But when you're distanced from it and you don't have that connection, or people aren't willing to be open with you and honest and say that they're gay in your own family, then you are distanced.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think it was this year, was it the theme of the float was religions of the world? Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we had Islam, we had Catholic portrayed, we had Buddhist portrayed, we had all these different religions, and we wanted to have the religions of the world together with the Mormons and together with everyone in this float with angels. It's kind of like they're sent from God, like God has said that it's okay, that gay is okay. And visually, we communicated that with the signage and with beautiful outfits, and it was great. We had an absolute ball doing it and delivering it. It was just magical.
Is there any is there any danger in doing that? I mean, that's
yeah.
like Sam said, the tension here is high.
There always is danger. We had security and police lined up as far as the eye could see. It was unbelievable. Yeah, yeah, we did for the parade, and it's a shame that it has to be that way. Once we got in the stadium, though, it was a COVID-safe arrangement where we were in a stadium. The crowd went ballistic, and the tears fell down my face when I was greeted by the applaud and the level of acceptance. And you know what? There's only one place where we as a gay community really feel accepted, and it is in a lot of those parades. We are made to feel like true and living rock stars, which is a complete opposite of what you've been made to live your whole life, in the closet.
Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful. Man, there's so many things that I never have had to or could think about, given the fact that I haven't had to experience that. And I think about the amount of people, like, I know, as you mentioned, you're often and largely an invisible community, but there's still there, how people feel. And there's still that, I imagine, a lingering feeling in a lot of situations where you don't know if it's a safe place to be yourself or to express yourself in the way that you feel most comfortable. So
absolutely. I still feel like I can't hold my hands with my husband in some suburbs of Australia. and that would be the same in America. You just don't go into them holding hands. And this is something that infuriates me right from the time that I came out. I wanted to hold hands all the time, like I could as a straight person, right? You can as a straight person. But no, as a gay person, no. And so there's a conflict here that occurs, and it's disappointing, and it's heartbreaking that you can't do it everywhere because of the hatred that you're talking about, because of that feeling that you could get, egged or whatever in the streets.
Or harassed.
Harassed.
Who knows?
Absolutely.
Who knows? Yeah, that's something to really have to consider and weigh. That's why I can't imagine then when going from that to that. I can't imagine the feeling that you experience when it's just so openly celebrated. It must be the most beautiful feeling in the world.
Yeah, it's a true rock star feeling that is absolutely opposite to what you feel growing up closeted.
Did your husband come from a faith background at all?
No, he didn't. He was out when he was very young, when he was in his high school years at school. And he's been out his whole life, but he still had to deal with being ostracized. So his family, his father said, you can't live in the house. And he moved out at a very young age. But there's been some restitution and forgiving over the years. And his dad voted yes for marriage equality. And now they're really the best mates. And they talk on the phone every couple of days, So this is what experiences. It's different for every LGBTIQ plus individual, I think. They all have different experiences.
So I think, like Sam said, we have limited experience with Mormonism, but one of the things that's tough in like the evangelical Christianity is like the teaching that like the Bible is the inerrant word of God. It is what it says it is, exactly how it says it is, and there's no change in it, and that's it. In Mormonism, Mormons have kind of had to update their stance on things over the years in a formal way. I know there was, I remember reading some stuff about their relations with minority communities and things like that, just outdated. They updated them. So do you feel like this is a really doable thing for them to roll back some of these policies on homosexuality?
Absolutely, I do. I feel, and I have a vision of the future, and that vision is that churches of the world, and Mormons could be one of the first, will actually accept and marry gay people in their churches and change their tune. And I believe it could and it is possible. That's what I believe. And I believe it's in any religion it could be possible. I'm not sure who's going to be first. I don't know when, but I do feel that will occur in the future.
Yeah, I believe there's a few. I know of a few churches, maybe some Episcopalian churches. There's a few that have seen some pretty serious splits over that. People will a pastor, a minister, whatever, will marry a gay couple, and I mean, you might be out of a job after that. But I've also, you've seen things go the other way too, where there might be a split. Maybe new denominations are kind of developed out of that. And I know there are a couple, maybe a few that have moved in that direction, and they're not seen too kindly or respected very highly by everyone else who disagrees with them.
Wishy-washy Christians like Sam.
Yeah. They're like pioneers of the world.
Mm-hmm.
They see the new future.
Have you so I know you're not part of the church anymore, but I guess I'm asking if you still have any sort of connection to faith or religion?
Yeah, I'm still on their records, and I consider myself and call myself a Peacock Mormon. This is a Mormon that is gay, and I just consider myself that's what I am. I haven't sought to take myself off the records or do anything like that. I'm different. I'm there to help them, and I'm there to help the community, and that's what I'm here for. And so, if I can stay connected to them in some way, then maybe that can be beneficial.
Yeah. What does that look like for you? Does it influence, any traditional aspects? Like, do you still go to the church? Do you participate in it in that way at all?
Right. I see what you're saying. No, I don't go to church. I don't, only if there's an event on or something like that, a family thing, would I go to that. We went to funeral, for example, my husband and I, we held hands in the Mormon church, and they were quite, shocked. We stood out like sore thumbs.
So you went and protested a funeral is what you're trying to tell us?
Well, it was all about love. It's all about love. Yeah, and we dressed up in our gay outfit, gay suits as well. So.
You wore the wings, and you're like, it's not about us, guys. Come on.
Yeah, it's a bit of fur and stuff involved, and whatever. Anyway, that's how my position at the moment. I call myself a Peacock Mormon, and I'm going to keep it that way, and in hopes that I can connect with them and help them on their journey.
Yeah.
So I know, like, for me especially, and I think a lot of people that we've talked to throughout this whole thing, like, when you said that you're not angry or bitter at the people involved, I think that's huge, and that's something that I think is really hard to communicate to people who are totally on the outside of one of these institutions, and they just look in and they see like screw this, screw that. Like, why do you want anything to do with those people? It's really easy to write off the whole group, but I think it's like an important distinction to say that, like, look, people are wrong, but they're not bad people. Like, they're good people with bad ideas.
Yes.
Now, like, the institution itself, like, do you struggle with any anger or bitterness against? I mean, I know that was tough for me to get over.
No, I don't. I've really come around and I feel like a sense of invigoration and healing and complete peace. I'm at peace completely with them. I don't hold any malice or anything. Of course, they did some things that were untoward when I was growing up, when I was very young. Some things that were, making me feel shame. Making you feel if you masturbate, you're going to go to hell, and you're gay if you masturbate. And these are the things that they used to teach and stuff. And
that's international, I guess.
Yeah, it is kind of international.
We didn't get that you're gay if you masturbate. That's a message that you were.
Yeah. Oh, yes, very strong. And they had paraphernalia and books on it, and how not to be gay, and how to, get out
how
of it.
How not to masturbate. No.
Yes, how not to masturbate. Oh, they were fixated on it. And it really, at a young age, when you're only 12 years of age, and you're receiving those kind of messages, it's very disruptive and very, and I couldn't live my life honestly. I was living a lie, basically, my whole life until I came out. And that's when I felt fantastic, because when that burden was lifted from my shoulders.
Yeah.
At that age, it's a huge burden.
So, I mean, the whole time you're going up through it, you are obviously repressing it. Was there ever moments where was it constantly something you were thinking about? Was it every day, or
daily? I think a little bit like masturbation is daily. Of course it was daily.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I had those feelings and thoughts all the time. Yeah. I used to hide porn from my wife, my ex-wives, under the house, buried under the dirt.
That's some porn. Teenage stuff right there.
Gay porn. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Who hasn't dug a hole to hide some porn?
I mean, it's the journey you've gone on, I think, is wild. I think even in regards to, you coming out on the other side of it with the level of healing that you have, like it sounds like that just being able to have that forgiveness and that love, like, that seems to have brought you a lot of healing that maybe some people, you could rightfully be angry, and you could rightfully have bitterness, but it sounds like that it doesn't consume, like, to have that not consume any part of your heart or your.
No, it doesn't. Not at all. No, very blessed. I'm very lucky, and I feel really utterly fantastic as a result.
Yeah.
Completely liberated.
Yeah.
Well, how wild does gay Mardi Gras get?
Oh, it gets pretty wild. I mean, to be able to, march around in underwear and be who you are and express yourself openly and visually is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful experience, and I try to get family members, and some of my kids have done it with me, and they've loved it, and it's kind of like our church in a way. Really,
yeah.
This is our church. This is our gay church. Going to Mardi Gras is gay. The gay, you had the church, and then you get all the churches together all at once, and the churches that go to a conference. Well, we have our conference, and that's our gay Mardi Gras, and it's a beautiful event.
How long do you spend getting ready? How do you spend like almost an entire year getting ready for the next one? With
well, because I rotate them. I used to be able to travel before the pandemic to ones all over the world in different locations. And that's included in the US, that's included in Europe, and that's included like kind of everywhere. So then I had a rolling at least 3 or 4 a year that I could knock out. Yeah. But yes, I do a complete outfit change for every Mardi Gras, and it's a completely new concept. And drive home, it's always a similar message, gay is okay, but sometimes there might be something else that's important for the community. Like, for example, in Prague, we marched against neo-Nazis that came in to protest against us. And that was quite confronting. And we marched for marriage equality because they don't have it yet in their country. So that's just one example. Yeah.
So what's the next? What are the next ones? I mean, I don't know if you're able to really make plans for it.
I know. I so wish I could go to Whistler. They have one on the ski slopes, which I have done before, in a fur coat and underwear and a huge 5-meter gay flag, and ski down. Well, I wish I could do that in February, but if not, we will have the Sydney Mardi Gras again in March. It's in March every year. It's iconic. It's highly visible to the bottom half of the planet. So all the Asian countries and all of that who normally there's low levels of acceptance in those countries. So the Mardi Gras is an important symbol to them, and it's televised to these countries, and they get to see it, and it's really important for those communities to see that and to be able to look towards something as a symbol of freedom and being open and out completely, which is the Mardi Gras.
Yeah. Man, well, you sent us some amazing pictures that we're definitely I'm excited to post when this episode goes up. You sent me some really fun ones, some beautiful ones. I'm excited about sharing those with our community here.
Absolutely. I hope that they can be used and hope that people can appreciate what we're trying to do. It's, about making gay okay visible, to the world, to the whole world and to everyone. And it's reaching out. It's reaching out. rather than just sitting at home and doing nothing. But this is what we do, us gays.
Man, well, thanks so much for telling us your story and sharing it with us. It's a beautiful story. I'm encouraged by it. I think a lot of other people will be too. I think you're doing amazing work. So
thank you, Sam. Thank you, Casey. Thank you very much, both of you. It's been an absolute pleasure, and gay is okay. Trust me. Actually, it's fantastic.
Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we will catch you next time.